but it is still the Wrestling Perspective Podcast. Surprise, surprise. Happy Monday. We are releasing this early. We have an amazing interview with Chelsea Green, Laura Van Ness. I'm Dennis Farrell, and he is the man who has a whole weekend named after him. No, it's not Rusev Day. It's Happy Canadian Destroyer Day. Petey Williams.
How's she going, eh? I mean, I feel Rusev Day is a day. I feel like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a long weekend is named after the Canadian Destroyer. I mean, what weekends have passed nowadays where a Canadian Destroyer has not been used on some sort of wrestling show? Right, Dennis?
You've been very even keel about it in past podcasts about, I can't stop everybody from using it. We talk, and I think I'm finally getting you to see it my way, where you've built something up. It is your finishing move. It is your legacy in the wrestling industry. Sure, wrestlers using it is a nice little, pat on the back for you, but at some point, when it's used 4 times on a show, everybody kicks out of it. They're killing this move for you.
Yeah, I mean, the move's been killed. I mean, let's just be honest. Let's just call a spade a spade. I mean, the move's been killed. However, I think now is the time where I say, you know what? There's only me that is allowed to use it, and for the rest of 2018, or maybe for the rest of their career, another person can use it. And maybe this could be a 1-year thing. What do you think?
I think we should discuss it further later in the podcast about the use of the Canadian Destroyer and who's allowed to use it. I don't think we talk about it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Let's talk about other pressing wrestling things.
The Canadian Destroyer, by the way, for just 1 second, I don't get a kick out of seeing everybody use it off the top rope in a death match or, 18 times in a show. I get more upset than you do, and I've never even taken it. I've never even been between your legs, as weird as that just sounded.
Okay.
But I'm just a friend who is upset that other people are taking advantage. Sure, the guy who did the armbar, what is it, Matthew Armbar? When he created...
Okay, and John Armbar.
Yeah, John Armbar, when he did the armbar, and then everybody started using it. Matthew Clothesline, when he started all these great guys who had moves named after them. At some point, it becomes just another wrestling hold now, and I never wanted to see the Canadian Destroyer turn into that.
Yeah, and neither did I. And I still think it has a little bit of something to it. Like, people still go, ooh, when it's maybe not like it used to be, but now it's a ooh, So, I mean, it is losing its value, which sucks. But, I mean, you got to remember, people don't realize that this move is over 15 years old. I mean, this is way early 2000s that we started this. But I'll tell you what, I've never given anybody my blessing on it. Like, when people say, like, yeah, the only people that should be able to do this move is Petey Williams and Teddy Hart. Like, no, Teddy Hart should not be able to do it. I'm like, I did not give my blessing to Teddy Hart. Why? Because he's Canadian? Like, that's not my blessing. I'm like, I have never given my blessing to anybody to do this move. So, and I'm not bitter about it. I know I can't control it because, I mean, I get so many tweets all the time where it's like, hey, look at this Canadian Destroyer. Look at this Canadian Destroyer. And that's why we call Saturday, instead of calling it Saturday, we call it Canadian Destroyer Day. So, I mean, that's what it is now.
Why do you think, and I'm not saying Teddy Hart thinks he has permission to do it, or not that anybody's even asked. Maybe that would be a whole different story if someone said, hey, Pete, do you mind? What was it? Early in the wrestling podcast days, we had a fan email us, and he said he was going to a wrestling school in Georgia. Do you remember this story?
Yeah, kind of.
And he wrote in and said, I would love to use the Canadian Destroyer.
Yeah.
And we read it on the podcast. And I think you said, No, but here's why. I want you to be original. I want you to create your next, whatever the Canadian
Yep.
Destroyer would be. If I give you permission and you use it, it hampers your creativity as a young student. Now, it might have been different if this kid was a 10-year vet or a 12-year vet, and he's going to be on the show and he emails and says, hey, do you mind? Maybe a totally different story. But from a young kid going into a wrestling school, the last thing he probably, or you probably want him to do, is to emulate anybody. Be him.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm like, when people come to me, and that individual wasn't the first person that said, "Hey, I want to do your move." I've had so many, contacts and stuff like that where there people are through social media saying, "Hey, I love your finishing move. I want to pay homage to you," and be like, "Hey, I want to do your Canadian Destroyer." Okay, yeah, great that you want to do that. Awesome. But be original yourself. Why don't, instead of doing the move, like you said, Dennis, like, why don't you be creative and come up with your own move where people can emulate you? I mean, that's what it's all about. You want to be able to, so I've created something that everybody wants to do. Awesome. Great. Why don't you be that individual that does the same thing? I mean, that's ultimately what I'm looking for. And, I know years from now, I mean, it's just going to be, and pretty much now it's just a move that people do. But, it always comes back to like, hey, who originated that move? It was Petey Williams, the Canadian Destroyer. But I give props to the guys that want to do that. But, use your own brain, come up with the moves yourself, be original. That's what's going to make you, stand out for years to come. Like when you're long dead from professional wrestling, if you could leave your mark, that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Let's move on. I have some interesting stuff to talk to you about. Somehow, Petey, I found myself in the wrestling industry, probably at the lowest level. I don't want to play it up and make it sound like I'm big man on campus right now, but so, that CWL promotion we've talked about, I am somehow the second in charge, believe it or not. Me, Petey Williams.
The CEO, Dennis Farrell. All right, awesome. Go on.
It's interesting because now I want to talk about some of my struggles. Not that it's a bad business or anything like that, but there's some things that needed to be cleaned up. I've had to do some wrestling dealings. I use you as a guide sometimes. You know it, and I know it. You had the experience, and I'll shoot you a text like, hey, what's protocol here? Or what should I do? A few things that I've had to do, and I'm not going to mention any names. I had to let a wrestler go because earlier in the week he was... So I get the text that says, hey, we have this guy, the deal, and... Let's say, I'm just going to make up a number. Let's say they agree to a deal for $400 a show in a hotel room. And the guy's driving, that's with trans. Well, the guy now wants more money. He figured that he can't, he can't do it for that price. He wants more money. He has a pretty big last name. I'm not sure, personally if he does, but his family does. So the guy starts asking for more money. And this is from the owner's perspective. Now, I'm playing both perspectives because I don't know what's true as a guy who's just stepping in. So he wants me to call and figure out what's going on. So I call the guy, and the guy says, oh, we didn't really have a deal. I told him I'd cut him a break. I see what he's paying some of these other guys. I just can't do it for $400. I kind of say, look, between you and I, go take other bookings. If you feel like you can make more money, I don't want to be standing in your way. This is a weird situation. I'm here to massage it and make sure both sides get what they want. Now, the owner was okay if he walked away, but he didn't want to be left in limbo or held up for more money from his perspective. So I said, go take other bookings. Just wash your hands of it. Let's all agree to be adults. No hard feelings. You still have plenty of time to take bookings. We can, if there's a season 2 of this product, which this has a television deal, a 12 show season deal with one of the local TV shows here. I said, if there's a season 2, and I've been downplaying it to people just because you hear all these promotions that have their high pie in the sky. This is going to be the greatest thing ever. I don't want to.
Yep.
I don't want to BS wrestlers. I don't want to BS people who's working. I'm going to be. I may even downplay it some just to keep everybody grounded. That's kind of what I'm trying to do. I said, if there's a season 2, maybe we can revisit this at a different price that makes everybody happy. And he moves on. I felt like I did a good job there. You know?
Yeah. No. Well, first, let me ask you: are these 12 shows in the same venue?
No, they are going to be in different venues in Michigan. There's one show, and if you're not in Michigan and listening, this part doesn't really matter. So, just listen. There's one in Brighton and one in Howell, and all within miles of each other.
Yeah.
So that part's just different venues, different venue prices, stuff like that. Then I had to deal with travel concerns because, and I'll be honest, Matt Stryker wasn't happy on the airline he was booked, and then he wasn't happy that he had to pay for his own luggage. Now, me just getting into the spot, I had to reach out to you and say, hey, what's your feelings on this? How should I handle this? Because now he did the same thing with another wrestler. I don't think the wrestler knows yet, and I'm not going to say any more than that. So I reached out to you and you said, well, look, you probably should do this. And yeah, he's going to be mad about this. So I told the kid and I'll tell you off the air who it was because I didn't want to deal with this guy between you and I. I'm quite freaking afraid of him. So, so I told the kid, look, email him his flight details and just see how he reacts based on how we'll fix the situation. If he's not happy, because on the way back, he booked him a connecting flight, Pete.
Yeah. So, man, it's so tough being a promoter nowadays because, man, when I first started wrestling, I mean, checking a bag was free. It really was. Now you have like Spirit Airlines, and I mean, I know Spirit was the first one to do it. They're like, to check a bag, it's like $50 or whatever. And I know like promoters have flown me in. I don't know if it's because I'm Petey Williams or if they do this for all the wrestlers they fly in. But they'll like, I know I had to book you on Spirit Airlines. I understand it costs money to check a bag, so I will pay for that. Instead of flying you Delta, it would cost more money, all that kind of stuff. It all comes down to money stuff. And then doing a connecting flight, like, I don't really care. I would prefer a non-connecting flight. It depends where you are. Like, like on the echelon of professional wrestling. I'm Dennis, me. I'm pretty easygoing. I'm like, what? If you want to book me on a connecting flight, okay, no problem. Like, I mean, I don't hold any grudges or anything like that. I'm a really easygoing guy. Most guys aren't like that. Like, I know some guys are like, hey, I need a first class ticket. Guys like that can't fit in an economy seat, like a Kevin Nash or I'm trying to think. I don't know, guy. But like guys that are big, right? They're like, dude, you have to book me in a first class. I'm like, I can't even fit in these economy seats, right? So I mean that's tough, and that's why not everybody and their mother runs a wrestling company, because it's a lot of like, hey, this guy needs this and this guy needs that, and this, it's a lot of moving parts, right? And I know you kind of sent me the show, and you were like, hey, what do you think? And I'm like, hey, like, it just off the top of my head, just when I'm reading, I'm like, these entrances are too long. This doesn't need to be like that, and that. But I'm used to like the Impact format. But I feel like Impact has a good flow to a professional wrestling show. I mean, that's just what I feel like, how you come in and out of things and stuff like that, and commercial breaks and all that kind of stuff. So, and I'm willing to help. Like, I mean, these are just like, I didn't take a lot of time looking at the show. I just looked at it like, when he sent it to me, like up and down, like, okay, this is what immediately pops out at me. So, I mean, like everybody, I understand it's my dream, Dennis, probably your dream to run a professional wrestling show. and have like a TV contract and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of things that really people don't consider that you really need to consider.
It's weird, and I'm speaking candid here because as we've heard over the past how many podcasts, my goal was to be your manager one time in an indie match. That's all I want to do. Now I find myself kind of I'm helping the booking, which you'll be proud of me. I'm going to tell you a story here in a second. But I'm doing booking. I'm helping set the ring up. Like I went to the venue the other night and said, what if we use these as the entrance and we can put the gorilla here and this here, and they loved it. Like all my ideas have been great so far. And I've learned.
Hey, there you go, Dennis. I love this, man. You're learning. This is good.
I listened to you every time you talked in the car. When it seemed like I wasn't paying attention, I'm listening to everything you tell me. So I'm like, what if we put the hard camera here and then we put this camera here and we have the two roving? Like I'm learning based on what I've been watching and seeing. When I go,
hold on. How many cameras does he have set up? He has a hard cam, and then how many handhelds?
He'll have 3 handhelds, 1 hard cam, and then a wide cam.
Oh, that's good. That's all you need. All right, good. Go on.
So, but I'm moving things around. Booking, by the way, dream job. I'm in a booking meeting, and guess what? He had me booked to do an interview segment, which dream come true, right? And I'm not going to say what it is because it's supposed to be a surprise guest. And I thought, all right, if this is a surprise guest and you want this moment to feel right, here's what you need to do. Instead of having me stand out there and then say, we just got a note that, the number one contender is going to be, and then whatever happens. I said, why don't you have the camera pan on Stryker, have someone hand him a note, have him take the mic, go down to the ring, and have Matt Stryker do the announcement because it feels bigger now that he left to go down there to make this announcement than to have me out there.
Yeah. And when you sent me the show, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of like little things that have to be touched up. I mean, we'll have to talk about this
off the
air. Yeah.
But that was one of the changes I made.
You got the right gist of it. Yeah.
Because I want things to feel special. And as bad as I want to be on air doing something, I want it to make sense. And I don't want to put myself in a position to fail or, make the product not seem cooler than it is. So I actually, book myself out of that role.
Yeah. And how I encourage all our listeners right now, look at WWE, look at Impact, look at whatever wrestling show, and look at like what they do, like at the opening of the show, like right from the beginning, right after the cold open, right, from their opening match to whatever their promos, what they do in the commercial break, coming out of commercial break, all that kind of stuff. And you can see whether it's Impact or WWE, Ring of Honor, New Japan, whatever company it is. They all have their own format of what works best, and they stick to it, right? So, you can almost see like next week, like I think we talked about this before, Dennis. Like watching a WWE product, you can almost tell during the middle of the match when they're going into commercial, when they're like all that kind of stuff, because there's a format that they follow that works, and they got to stick to it. So, pretty much when you're booking the show, Dennis, you got to stick to a format, stick with it. And even though it might be predictable, people will know, like, okay, I know it's coming up next, whatever the case may be. Maybe because we have like a trained eye or whatever, but it's a format that works.
Yeah. And where I think I call him this kid, not as a derogatory term. He's 24 years old. He saved up and worked hard for all this money. And a lot of people have been trying to spend his money. As you call him, the money man. I come in and I'm trying to save him money. And, I know, and I talked to him about this. He has a ton of guys. Like Big Cass is part of this show, which is huge, whether you like Big Cass or not. This is, Big Cass, I think this weekend had a match. First match on the Indies, and then this is going to be the first time he talks on the mic, and wrestles. This is going to be his promotion if this thing survives. MVP, Matt Stryker, Carlito. There's Ellsworth will be somewhat part of this. There's going to be a couple surprise names that I can't say on the podcast, but I felt like, and my vision for it was have a couple big stars, bring in young Michigan wrestling, because the people who are going to be in this crowd, really playing to high schools and gyms and stuff like that with inter promotions there, they won't know who some of these guys are. So you have an opportunity to build your own stars. So pay a couple big bucks to some of these big guys, bring in a bunch of smaller guys, and start building them up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the thing that Impact has faulted in the past. They'll bring in a guy. I remember when we first got Kurt Angle in 2000, whatever it was, early 2000s. And I'm like, oh, this is great. And he feuded with Joe, and Joe has never been beaten yet. And I'm like, oh, Joe's going to beat him. That's fine. But then they had Kurt Angle beat Joe. And I'm like, no, Joe's one of our guys. Have him beat one of the top guys in WWE. Anyways, that's here nor there. But you got to remember when you're booking these wrestling shows, it's just it's tough when you're booking these top guys, because you're like, okay, hey, we want you to lose to one of our bottom guys, because and I know when me coming into another wrestling promotion, I'm like, I know I'm not going to wrestle here like every month when they have the wrestling shows. I'm like, I know I'm going to lose, and it's going to elevate their top guys. Like it makes sense. And one thing you have to understand, Dennis, when you're booking these wrestling shows, I know we do it with Impact. Like we film like each night when we do Impact tapings, we film 2 full shows, and we just do the matches. And we don't worry about like, hey, the pre-tapes and all that kind of stuff. We'll just fill that in post-production to make it look good for TV. I mean, full disclosure, I mean, that's what we do. And a lot of the times people in the audience are like, why is this match happening? We don't understand. But to the Impact audience viewing on television, they're like, oh, that makes sense, because last week, they did this pre-tape segment that obviously didn't air to the audience. But, that's how you have to do it. You almost have to you have to know like the limitations to the audience. Like, if it's going to be a 2.5 hour, 3-hour show, even though you're filming like a bunch of shows at once that could equate to 4 or 5 hours or whatever, you have to kind of do all the pre-tape stuff behind the scenes, not show it to the people, and be like, hey, this is just like a produced show. I mean, that's what it is. So, I mean, if you want to have a successful promotion, that's what you got to do. Present them with like, good wrestling, and then you can fill in all the other like pre-tape stuff and all that kind of stuff afterwards. You don't have to show it to the audience. Audience is just there for good wrestling. That's all they're doing. And then you can fill it all in after, and then that could be your full produced wrestling show.
Before we wrap this up and get on with the Chelsea Green interview, 2 things I want to touch on before we go on. First, I want to get a little mushy here with the fans, because before you and I started recording, we were talking about where this podcast is compared to where we started. And every day I'm blown away when people tweet us about the show, what they love, what they don't want. Every time it really feels like we're building an awesome community. One of the wrestlers, I don't even want to mention his name. If you want to, that's fine, told you what he liked about our podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be straight up honest. He's like, Sammy Callahan, who I believe is like an ace in the professional wrestling industry right now. Like, and Sammy told me straight up, he's like, hey, dude, I used to watch you on Wednesday nights on TNA. I used to watch the pay-per-views and stuff like that. And I used to be like, oh, man, is that guy going to do the Canadian Destroyer? I want to watch this match and stuff like that. And now I'm watching him, and I've told him that. And when this, we already did an interview with him, like when it aired, I'm like, I told him straight up, I'm like, dude, you used to watch me on, TV. Now I watch you, because that's how much I respect you. So, and what he loves about our podcast is that, we're not sitting here saying like, hey, Petey Williams and Dennis Farrell are the best. We're just going to put ourselves over. No, we don't do that. I'm like, we understand there's a whole other, like, it's all this wrestling stuff we talk about. We're just two dudes talking about wrestling. And I'll tell you straight up, like, I crack open some beers and I do this podcast. Dennis, I don't know what you do. I'm sure you might crack open a beer or two, and I mean, we just talk wrestling because that's what we love to do. And maybe that's why people love our wrestling podcast so much, is because we just, that's what people do in real life. I mean, we're just two guys talking wrestling, and we just love talking wrestling.
I even got mad because my favorite is to do these in the same room with you. And I think, a little inside baseball, before the show, Petey starts to fire out back. He's like, all right, we're getting ready. Let's do this. All of a sudden, like a pack of wolves. I don't even know what to describe.
When I was outside in my you've been in my backyard, yes. Right? The huge backyard with a bonfire. I'm having a bonfire, and I'm like, dude, there's sirens going off. I'm like, there's coyotes in my woods. I'm like, they're howling. I'm like, dude, I have to go inside my house right now. Like, I can't chill by the fire and do this.
And I go, what? You had a fire? Man, I would have come down for that. And you go, dude, I almost invited you. Look, Petey only lives like 30 minutes from me. I would have packed up my podcast stuff, got in my car, drove down there, set it up, because I'm in a weird position at work right now where they're actually paying me not to come into work, Petey.
That's awesome. I would love to be paid to not come into work. Oh my God. I think all of our listeners right now would love to be paid to not come into work right now.
It's not a good thing. Trust me. It's not a good thing. We'll talk more off the air about that. But I wanted to say thank you to the fans, for everybody that downloads and tells their friends. I can't mention everybody. There's like a Robert McNeely on Facebook that really promotes us. The last podcast, I really said a lot of thank you to people. But Pete, this podcast is bigger. I mean, we've spent the last 3 weeks in the top 20 on iTunes. I would never have imagined this. The Dougcast with James Ellsworth jumping on. I'd have never imagined I'd be doing 2 wrestling podcasts with 2 current wrestlers. And here we are. And why I brought this up, by the way, just, because we're about to go into our Blue Chew ad, I actually had a guy reach out and say, the Blue Chew ads that we've been doing have been some of the best Blue Chew ads he's heard on any wrestling podcast. And he was shocked to find out that we don't rehearse them. We don't write them up. We just have a few details, and you and I, we just try to have fun with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what you got to do in wrestling. I mean, and that's why I love this podcast so much, is because, Dennis, we're seriously 2 dudes, whether I'm like a famous professional wrestler or not.
Barely famous.
We just like talking wrestling. That's what we do. We like to analyze it like everybody else, like all of our viewers, they like to analyze pro wrestling. I'm sure they would all love to have their own podcast, but they're like, oh, who would listen and all that kind of stuff. But, we're just blessed that we get to have viewers because, of name value and all that kind of stuff. And we get to talk professional wrestling. I mean, that's what we all love. We just love to talk professional wrestling.
And actually, that is one of the things you said to me when I pitched this to you. And I pitched hard for about 4 months about you doing this, and you brushed it off. You didn't really think so. And a couple times you're like, but dude, who'd listen? Dude, no, I'm not even. And at that point, you were not back into wrestling, and you did not have a high opinion of Petey Williams, the wrestler, what his name value would bring. Here we are now, and we've always said we don't care if 1 person or 100 people listen, but we'd like 1 million. So let's keep pushing towards that, folks. But yeah, we're just having fun. We're talking what you guys want to talk about. If you want us to talk about something, email the show. You can go to wrestlingperspectivepodcast.com. There's contact us. You can email us at wrestlingperspective@gmail.com. We'll talk about whatever you guys want to. I know in the past we tried to do it on someone else's feed where we did a call-in show. It did not work out well. It was like a blog talk thing. It didn't work out. What you and I'd like to maybe do it in the next month or so, is our Skype. We're getting a phone number. And maybe one day we're just going to tweet out the phone number and say, call us. And we're just going to record whoever calls us and wants to talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I was actually thinking the other day, and we have to talk about this off the air and stuff like that, because we have so many business ideas where we could pitch to each other and stuff like that. But I'm like, you know what? We have a lot of professional wrestlers as guests, which a lot of other podcasts do. I'm like, you know what? Nobody has fans as guests. I'm like, why don't we pick a fan, interview them for 10 minutes of their thoughts on professional wrestling? Because, I mean, that's all we talk about. It's like, our thoughts and all that kind of stuff, just shooting the breeze, and we can all just shoot the breeze together. But I mean, that's something we have to discuss off the air. But I mean,
I love it.
That's all we do. Yeah, I mean, that's all we do is we just talk about what's going on now, what we want to see in the future, fantasy booking, all that kind of stuff, inside baseball, we like to call it, but it's actually inside wrestling. And, I mean, I love that stuff, all the possibilities and stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's what I love to hear about the most.
Well, let's do that. Let's pick a day. We'll talk about it. We'll figure out the logistics, and we'll move forward with that. So if you're listening and you're a fan, make sure you follow PD at Petey Williams. You follow me at Dennis77 Farrell, Farrell. We got, like I said, Chelsea join us here in a second. But before that, PD, guess what we're talking about?
What?
Blue Chew.
Blue Chew.
Look.
Oh, man. It's good that we're talking about Blue Chew because we have Chelsea Green coming on. And what better person to talk about Blue Chew? Oh, man.
Listen, I'll say this, guys. Blue Chew has signed on for another month. And thankfully, because all the costs that come out of this podcast come out of my pocket. And Blue Chew's kind enough to put some money. That way we can save a couple bucks and put it into the promotion of the podcast. So thank you, first of all, to Blue Chew. They signed on for another month, which I was shocked, honestly, between me and you, PD. I couldn't believe they came back. But here they are.
Why wouldn't you want to sign up for another month? I mean, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, it is. And listen, if you're in bed and you're the opening match in your bedroom wrestling promotion and it's you and your girl wrestling around and somehow she always gets over on you and you think you're booked for a 10-minute match, but somehow it becomes a squash and you're done in like 30 seconds and you can't figure out what happened. I know you've been in one of those matches, right, PD?
I have. And do you remember what the opening match is called in professional wrestling?
The curtain jerker.
The curtain jerker. So if you're the curtain jerker and you don't want to get squashed, what do you think you should do, Dennis?
You should take Blue Chew because this is how it works.
Yes.
It's a chewable. It's the first chewable. It's actually a chewable with the same FDA-approved ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, so you know it works. What you can do is pop it in, chew it up, take a shower, come out. So you're getting ready to jerk the curtain, and guess what? Vince McMahon comes out and says, no, no, no. Now that you got the Blue Chew, you're main eventing tonight. I need you to go down there. I need you to tear the house down. So you get out there, you and your girl, you're done watching Live PD or MASH or the Golden Girls, whatever you guys watch before you go to bed, right? They bring down the house lights. The PA announcer, Michael Buffer. In this corner, it's Billy John and Sally Mae, whatever you two guys' names are. Insert your own names here. It makes it more authentic. Then you come out. You start to hold. You notice it's working, right? And guess what? You're doing a Canadian Destroyer from the top rope. You're tearing down the house. PD, what are the fans chanting?
They're chanting, "This is awesome."
That's right.
This is awesome.
You could be the only man getting a "This is awesome" chant, but from your neighbors because you're tearing down the house. I mean, who doesn't want that? You don't get that by going out there and not using performance-enhancing drugs. You may think you don't need Blue Chew, but Blue Chew takes you from a mid-carder to a main eventer in your woman's eyes. And women, if you're listening, and look, you always wondered what the secret to Ric Flair is. You want to know why he's the oldest ride with the longest line? Woo! That's because, he's not, but I'm throwing it in here to make it sound good. Blue Chew. So please, there's no more awkward doctor visits because you can get it online. You don't have to wait in a doctor's room. You don't have to wait in line at a pharmacy to get it. It gets shipped to your house in a discreet package. If you use the promo code Ellsworth, You just pay $5 for shipping. You get free order. Just a free order. We're giving it away to you, Petey Williams.
I mean, I really don't want to switch the promo code Canadian Destroyer, but I mean, Ellsworth, the people already know about it and stuff like that. We'll keep it Ellsworth. That's fine. But think about Ellsworth as the most devastating move in the history of professional wrestling, the Canadian Destroyer. Imagine if you could do the Canadian Destroyer in your bed. Like, this is awesome, champ. Right away.
Petey, I want you to go, when we get done with this, go get you an order of Blue Chew.
I'm gonna.
For $5. Use the promo code Ellsworth.
$5.
But deep down inside, it should be the Canadian Destroyer promo code. But use it. And you got to tell me, look, does when you've got your woman, back down, looking up at the lights for the 1, 2, 3, the clean finish in the middle of the bedroom ring, right? You get up, the ref holds your hand up high, which is weird because the ref was in the room while you were wrestling around.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But he does it. He hands you the greatest sex belt in your bedroom award or championship. I mean, and you look down at her, and she's still dazed and confused. I mean, she'll love you more.
Yeah, I mean, she'll probably be tapping out. I'll tell you the truth. I don't need Blue Chew, but I'll take it anyways because, I mean, why wouldn't you want to tap out your honey, right? Seriously.
Nobody needs Blue Chew.
No, I mean, you don't need it, but, I mean, you want it. I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that in the bed? Like, be the best. Like, I mean, why not? Oh, yeah, okay, I'll do a 3-star match. No. Why not be the match of the year candidate? Why not have the 5-star match that you want in the bedroom, right?
And
that's what I want to be for. Man, this is the match of the year. This is great. And this is all great because you know what? You know who we have next as our guest, Dennis?
What?
Chelsea Green.
Oh, man, I can't wait to start chanting Fight Forever. All right, guys, Chelsea Green coming right up. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, $5 shipping and handling. You get a free order of Blue Chew. Thank you because you guys keep doing this. They keep coming back. That's how we know you guys are buying. We really appreciate it. Petey, Chelsea Green, are you ready?
Oh, the beautiful, wonderful Chelsea Green. I'm ready.
Petey Williams here on the Wrestling Perspective Podcast. We've teased it all night long. We are going to talk about many topics from the Canadian Destroyer to me being blocked by her. I'm excited, Petey. Why don't you intro?
Yeah, so Dennis, this is our first female professional wrestler as a guest, believe it or not. I mean, I went through the guests and our first female. So it's my pleasure to introduce my former coworker, I guess you can say, the very beautiful and lovely Chelsea Green.
Oh my gosh, that was a great intro. Thank you, guys.
No problem.
Not at all.
All right, Dennis, if it's okay, I'm going to start with the first question. We'll get rid of the big elephant in the room. All right. So, Canadian Destroyer, we've seen it all over Twitter and stuff like that. It was on All In. You're on Lucha Underground now doing the move. So, now I'll tell you, all right, straight up, nobody has ever asked me, hey, can I have your blessing to do the move? But I'm willing to be the first you be the first person. I'll give you the blessing. You are the only other person besides me that I will say, yeah, you could do the Canadian Destroyer. I've watched it. I love it. I love how you do it, your character and all that kind of stuff. You can do it all the time. It's me and you, Chelsea. That's what it is. But,
I love that so much.
Tell me how this came about. You're at All In. You're like, I'm going to do the Canadian Destroyer. And I'm sure, obviously you filmed Lucha Underground before you did All In because it was pre-taped.
Yes.
So tell me how this all came about.
Okay, so I had never done a Canadian Destroyer. I had only seen it. And for so long, I think all of us women just looked at moves like that as oh my God, I don't even know how you guys go about doing that. And I ended up at Lucha Underground for a dark match in March. And out of that dark match came this feud that you will be seeing on Lucha Underground between Marty the Moth and Pentagon. And I'll never forget, I walked into Lucha to have my first kind of real debut. And Pentagon said, "You, Destroyer." I'm like, what? Like, Canadian Destroyer? He's like, "Yes, you, Canadian Destroyer, me." And I'm like, "No, I don't think so. And Chavo Guerrero was the agent, and Chavo's like, "Oh, I don't think so. You know, she hasn't done it. I don't think we should do it." And Pentagon was not taking no for an answer. He probably said it to me like 6 times, and finally I'm like, "You know what? All right, fuck it. I don't know if we can swear, but
you can now."
But I'm just gonna do it. Whatever. If there's anyone that can protect me in this moment at Lucha, it's gonna be Pentagon. So I did it, and I can't even tell you the rush I got from, like, that's the biggest move I've ever done, other than kind of like jumping off the top rope and stuff like that. Was the biggest thrill I have ever got. So that is kind of, I did it there, and as you see in the season, I'll have to do it a few more times. And then it went on to me doing a show on the Indies, and I really didn't trust giving it to a female. I felt Pentagon had really babied me when we were doing it. He really protected me. And I didn't want to do it to a girl. I didn't want to break my neck, you know what I mean, or hurt anybody else. But I was on the Indies doing a show for Wrestle Circus, wrestling Tessa Blanchard. And that's when I asked her, I'm like, I did the Canadian Destroyer about a month ago, and it was the best thing ever. Do you think that maybe you could try it? And she was totally into it. So we've done a couple on the Indies, maybe 2 on the Indies before All In. But if you notice, like, obviously when you go, you like are balls to the walls and you hook them under the stomach and you jump and you don't have any worry of them getting back and taking that bump. I always get very nervous. So I tend to actually, instead of hooking them, like force them to bump. And as I jump, I like grab their butt. So there's all these close-up pictures of me with my hands, like all around Tessa's butt, forcing her to take the bump. It's so good. But man, like that was, if I hadn't have done that move in that All-In match, I wouldn't have got that standing ovation that was so like crucial to us and our momentum in the match. And like when we finished that match, we were all just like, oh my God. Like, we added that move in last minute because that was something I was really passionate about putting in that match as a female. And we didn't have it until the very, very last minute. And when we put it in, and then, it came to the back at the end, we were all just like thanking Jesus and you for that move.
So I'll jump in for a second and say, from my point of view, I saw the video of the Lucha Underground and thought it was amazing. I tagged Petey. I'm like, Petey. And then I sent him a text like, you got to see this. This might have been the best Canadian Destroyer I've ever seen. And then 8 seconds later, you block me. It was heartbreaking.
What?
You blocked me from that. Yes.
So, Chelsea,
I bet I thought that you were trying to get me in an argument.
No.
No.
I gotta unblock you.
I gotta take the
Chelsea,
support.
Just so you know, hey, Dennis and I co-host and stuff. I actually tasked him. I'm like, I don't have time to keep up with all this stuff. I'm like, if you see something out there on social media, I'm like, just tag me. I'll start the controversy and stuff. It's all in big fun and stuff. But then it was you, and I'm like, oh, she's the only one that has my blessing to do this. I'm like, everybody else, absolutely not.
Yes.
And you know what? Actually, when I got back from the All In match, I knew Gail was upset. Gail was upset because obviously you guys, are both with Impact right now, and she is a stickler for making sure people don't kick out of anyone's finisher. And I respect that. Like, and that's I think that's great because things like the super kick now have become a forearm,
Yeah.
So I get that. And when she expressed that she was upset, I'm like, okay, got it. But also in that match, that was the best thing we could have done for us as females. Anywhere else, maybe not. But us as 4 females trying to fight for that, like I was so happy with the way that turned out.
No, absolutely. And I would say, like, so All In was not an Impact show. We'll talk about All In a second because I have a few questions about that. But, you know, on an Impact show, absolutely. If this was an Impact show, I'd be like, no, absolutely not. You don't kick out of that. You don't even do it.
Exactly.
But this isn't even an Impact show. So, you know, I'm partially okay with that. I'm okay with it, right? But so Gail, you know, you have to understand, like, Impact doesn't rule the world. Either does, like, you know, All In or WWE. Nothing rules the wrestling world, right? So, I mean, I'm okay with that. But anyways, Dennis, go on.
Do you think we should come up with a pledge that if once a year you bless one person to be able to use a Canadian destroyer and they have to put their hand on a Bible? And
yes,
like a ceremony.
I love that.
You know, I will not allow.
Year.
Yes, I will not allow anybody to kick out of the destroyer. You know, right hand on the Bible and repeat after me.
Yeah, no. So this year, starting September 2018 until September 2019, it's Chelsea Green. She gets it. Yep, it's you. And then next year, I could bless. This is great, Dennis. Thank you, and thank you, Chelsea.
This is a great idea. But before we go any further, I need to know your Twitter handle.
It's Dennis77 Farrell. As heartbreaking it is to have been blocked by you. It's rough.
I'm trying to look for you now. I'm trying to undo the horrible mistake I've made.
It's funny because you're only the second wrestler to have blocked me. I was blocked by Josh Matthews, but it was accidentally by his kid. So it's his 3-year-old kid, I believe it is. So I got that one reversed.
No, mine. That would have been me. I can't even make an excuse up for that.
Well, let me jump in now. Let me jump in and start asking some questions, Pete, because we talked about Impact, and I as a fan, before we started getting this podcast, I was a wrestling nerd. I self-proclaimed wrestling nerd. I was shocked because I'm not a dirt sheet guy. When I heard that you had asked for your release, I kind of did a little bit of digging the other day, and it said that you had asked for it twice. And I'm not sure if all this is accurate. Feel free to correct me.
Yeah.
You asked once when you won the championship, and then you were granted it a little bit later. As the regime was changing, the product was getting better. And I don't know if when you asked for it, there was light at the end of the tunnel, and the product we see now was what was being presented to you. But what were some of the circumstances behind you wanting to leave Impact?
Yeah, I got a lot of heat for what people thought was, and I mean, it is true, me asking for my release on the day that I won the title. That is completely true, but people don't understand the circumstances. And at that point, you know, I had been wrestling barefoot in my dress for about 8 months, which I was happy with. I love my character. I love how it's evolved. But, you know, one day I just thought, they haven't even given me a real storyline. I've just been riding my own kind of wave that I've made off of social media. They really hadn't given me a storyline since the wedding. I thought, you know, I bet if I put my gear on and I took a bit of my makeup off and only kept my face, I bet they won't even notice. They gave me a match in Canada, and I came out in my gear and my boots, and not one person at Impact said anything. And that was like my first step towards, I knew that I was coming to kind of like the end of my Impact journey. But that was one thing where I was like, man, that sucks. You know, I would have thought like that we have enough agents in the back, or we have enough producers or anything to kind of like keep some sort of, I don't know, tabs on what we're doing. But I was just really, really struggling to find that the girls were doing anything relevant. And then I think the straw that broke the camel's back would have been when, first of all, I was not actually even invited to that set of tapings, to the Bound for Glory tapings. And I was upset about that, but I understood. I really didn't have a storyline, like I said. So I understood what would be the point of me being there. With that being said, I gave them so many ideas for what I could do and why I should be there. And I knew that Grado was going to be there, and I had a storyline with Grado, and I just felt like I gave them all these opportunities, and we don't have many girls at Impact. It's not like WWE where we really need to fight for that position. We all are so different and have different roles and have and at that point kind of had different areas that we were in the show. So I was called up, no joke, 12 hours before Bound for Glory, and they told me, we need you to get on the plane, and we need you to get to Bound for Glory. And I was very grateful for that, but at the same time, I'm a female. If I don't have new gear, if I don't have like my hair in and all these things that people don't think about, that really ruins me coming out as a character. And I didn't have any of that ready, but I packed up my bags. I went there. I was happy to be there. And again, throughout that whole week, I never once was told that I was winning the title. If you watch back, my gear is unfinished. I have multiple nip slips. It's such a mess. And I think just the combination of that whole weekend, I was like, man, I'm done. I'm so thankful. I really did want to win this title as that kind of that next step in this crazy wrestling journey of mine. And when I won it, I didn't feel that same accomplishment. I didn't feel I deserved it. I didn't feel that they had wanted to give it to me. I felt that I was given it because someone else didn't show up, whoever that was, whether it was, Taya, Valkyrie, or someone. There was some plan that did not go as planned, and that is why I won the title. And I know that, and I think that that's kind of where I just lost my passion for Impact, and I needed a break, whether it was getting my release or I just needed a break. And that is, I walked into a meeting with Scott D'Amore and Sanjay and Gail, and I just laid everything out of the table, and I didn't want to lie to them. I want more out of my career, and I feel like I'm giving everyone 50% here.
That's well said, actually. I saw you at a Border City show for the first time, I believe it was last year, and I was blown away. I loved the way that you have developed your character, the way the lipstick, like everything that you presented with that character when it went right, it was perfect. The evolution now to what we've seen a little bit in Lucha Underground is, I would say, totally different. How did you script or in your mind plan the evolution of this character you wanted to portray?
So, okay, first of all, that Border City Wrestling, that match, I pulled my groin halfway through and wasn't able, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm like limping off at the end, and I couldn't walk for like 2 weeks after that. But that's just a little fun fact. But no, I never ever foresaw this being like kind of the hit of a character it was. I never have planned what I'm going to do next, what my next step was going to be. I had plans to do, I never had plans to be in Lucha. That was just an amazing opportunity that came at the same time that WWE kind of just was saying that they weren't interested. So that Lucha character is going to be, and you're going to see it evolve, that's going to be something completely different. That will be the Lucha Underground Chelsea, the girl who is more of a serious wrestler, who does more risky moves, the Canadian Destroyer, things off the top rope, things that I don't necessarily do as the Hot Mess. The Hot Mess has always been, I take every match as it comes, and that's how I've ended up with some really funny spots, and that's how I've ended up wearing a fur coat and putting on sunglasses, and that also is how I came about being two-faced for All In. That wasn't planned. And then when I started to get my gear ready, I just thought, what can I do that's different? I don't want to go out there and turn back time and be a bride, but I do appreciate the fact that those are indie wrestling fans and they want the Hot Mess. They don't want to see another pretty girl. That's not why they're going to be watching me. And so every time I go out, I kind of like think of something different to try, whether it's something that someone has given me, a move, the way that maybe I speak on the mic or a spot. Like, I always just try to go out there with an open mind and try things as they come. And the best things that I've done and the things that have got the most traction have totally been the things that have just come out, or the facial expressions that I've made, in that moment.
Yeah, no, and it's funny that you bring that up, because I mean, I look at your character, but then I also look at like what women's wrestling is right now. Like, I remember growing up, you look at the Attitude Era. I'm sure, Chelsea, you've watched the Attitude Era.
Yeah,
it was women, and it was like, it was almost like degrading. It's like, and I wasn't into women's wrestling, because it was like, okay, these women can't really wrestle. They're just out there parading because they're women, sex sells.
Of course,
that kind of thing.
That's even how they were sold. Totally,
exactly. And now it's in a different era right now. I look at you. You can also you can almost do. I feel when it comes to character, you can almost do anything. You did that Bride's, character and stuff like that. You got it. So how do you feel like? It's actually making me watch women's wrestling now, because it's like, okay, they're actually like legit athletes. They're not just being paraded around like bimbos like they used to be. And I'm kind of like getting more into women's wrestling and stuff when I'm aging and all that kind of stuff, and what's going on now. Like, how do you feel? And it's almost like a really good time to be a lady in wrestling, because you have so much opportunity. How do you feel like women's wrestling is going on right now? Like, how do you feel about that? All that.
I feel so. When I first started, it was the very beginning of the women's revolution, whatever you want to call it. And I came into it thinking, I was so naive, and I just thought like, well, I work out, so I've got a decent enough body. I can do my makeup, I can do my hair, I can be pretty, this and that. And then fast forward to, 3 years later, and that's not at all what I'm using to my advantage, and I'm so proud of myself for stepping outside that box, and I think a lot of women have stepped outside that box. I'm really proud of Tessa, because Tessa is using her strength, something that maybe people wouldn't see as sexy. She's making it sexy. Britt Baker is a dentist, and she is making her education and her brain, on top of being able to wrestle, sexy. Madison Rayne, a mom who is wrestling full-time, a full-time mom and a full-time wrestler. Like, all these women are like superheroes in their own way, and it's completely different than it was in the 90s and the 2000s, because we've got so much more going for us, just like the men always have had. And so I'm really proud to bring the aspect to the table of I feel I could be anything. I could be a chameleon, and I hope that that's what people see when they now watch Lucha. I really didn't want Lucha to mesh with the hot mess. Once you get into that character and into the storyline, people will see that I can be a dark, evil, sexy character, or I can be the drunk hot mess, or I can be a split personality, crazy bride or crazy ex-girlfriend, and that's how I feel I'm going to continue to get booked and never get old, is I can always change my character and adapt to what's going on outside of wrestling, in wrestling, wherever it may be. And I mean, man, like, now is the best time for the girls. I mean, right? Like, all the pay-per-views have multiple matches. And I also feel like finally, we're all watching each other, and we're all trying to get better than each other. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I know you cannot say that the WWE girls are not watching the indies. You cannot say that the Impact girls aren't watching Lucha Underground, and vice versa. We're all watching each other because we all want to get better, and that's what makes this evolution or revolution happen.
Would you say the attitude went, and call me out if I say this wrong, but the attitude from women's wrestling went from, all the women kind of were catty to each other, didn't really support each other, to now everybody is now behind each other for the better, moving forward, giving each other advice?
Yeah, and I haven't been doing this very long, so I can't tell you what the locker room was like 5 years ago because I wasn't there, but in in my experience and from the stories I've heard, yes, that is completely true. And I keep telling people, I heard a great quote. I can't remember who said it, but collaboration is the future. It's the future of wrestling. It's the future of women's wrestling. You know, you're seeing Total Divas come out and have incredible ratings. And that's not because they're on that show bitching at each other. It's because they're on that show, showing a united front. For women's wrestling and for friendships and strong boss women, and that's what people want to see now.
Pete, I know you have your couple all-in questions. I've got one more question, and I would love for you then to wrap up the interview with your all-in stuff. But I want this interview to be about you, but I kind of have to ask about you are dating a wrestler in another organization. We'll leave it at that. What are the difficulties? And this is just the interesting part for me. What are the difficulties from you being a full-time wrestler somewhere else, dating someone who's a full-time wrestler somewhere else, who both of you guys have crazy schedules? How tiring is that on a relationship? How hard is it to continue? Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I had never dated a wrestler before Matt or Zach, whatever you want to call him. But I think I got really, really lucky in this situation because I'm just coming into this business, and not that he's going out of this business, but he has been there. He's been at WWE for 12 plus years now. You know, he's not walking on eggshells. He's comfortable with his position in the company and himself as a wrestler. And so I think I've got like the best of all the worlds because he's been doing this for so long. He knows when he can take time off and when he can't. He knows that when he comes home, he has to shut that wrestling side of his brain off. And that's what both of us do. We really try when we're at home together, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, to shut off wrestling. That's obviously very hard. Leading up to All In, honestly, that's all we spoke about over breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you know. But most of the time, we do go to parks and we do go to the beach and do fun things outside of wrestling because I would be driven crazy if I only spoke about wrestling, watched wrestling, you know, and had that in my relationship. But with that being said, it's hard no matter what because we only see each other 3 days out of the week. If we get lucky, maybe 4 or 5, maybe. And it's hard to have a lot of scrutiny put on your relationship. When we first dated, he was just getting out of a relationship with another wrestler, and I really liked her. But the pressure that social media put on myself and Matt and his ex-girlfriend was a lot. It was very, very dramatic, and I was not prepared for that. And I think that's my kind of first taste of anything WWE related in that sense, and the pressure that's really put on them by their fans and by social media.
Yeah, no, you know what, Chelsea, and I can relate. I totally get that. Like, I'm in a different profession outside of wrestling. My wife is in the same profession. You don't want to talk about that profession. I totally get it.
It's hard. It's very hard, and we want to support each other, right? And I am lucky that I'm lucky that on my side of things, being with Impact, they were totally okay and open to me talking about that relationship with someone in WWE. But I know that if it hadn't have been him that I dated, and if it was someone maybe in NXT, you know, they wouldn't have been able to publicly congratulate me on my success of being the Knockouts champion. And that's sad. You don't want that.
Yeah, and you know what? I think we're in a different time and era right now where, you know, like I really do honestly think that somebody in WWE, if you were still in Impact, can congratulate you. And it goes both ways. Like, I really do. People know there's a world outside of NXT, WWE, Impact, Ring of Honor, whatever the case may be. But since we're naming all these things, I want to talk about All In. I mean, now I don't. I'm trying to remember in my head. I've been thinking about this all podcast. I don't know if you guys were the only women's match on the show, the 4-way. I know Jordan Grace was like, okay, you were. Okay, thank you. So I was trying to remember that. So, like, how did that all come about? Like, who approached you? Like, how did it get booked? Like, I'm interested to know how all of this, like, you know, came to fruition.
So I had a bit of a funny experience because Cody Rhodes is Matt's best friend, one of his best friends. So
I did not know that. Okay.
Yes, that is a little fun fact that people don't really know. I mean, obviously, because everyone lives in different places, you don't see that all the time. But they are really good friends. So I felt really uncomfortable when I heard about All In. I felt really uncomfortable going to Brandy and Cody and saying, hey, I'd really appreciate, if you thought about me. I didn't want to put anyone in that position, and I've never done that ever, and I'll never use Matt or put someone that knows Matt in that position where they have to decide, right? So I never said anything, but I kept hearing, and this is the best thing, I kept hearing all these rumors that I was going to be on All In, and I'm like, is anybody going to freaking tell me? Nobody, no, I'm not even joking, nobody told me, not a soul told me I was on All In, and then Cody posted a picture that said Chelsea Green is All In.
Awesome. And you didn't even know. That was your way of knowing, right?
Yes. So when everybody found out on social media, I might have found out 2 minutes before that.
Oh, that is so great. Apparently I was a part of All In because, we had the Canadian Destroyer move in your match and in like the main event and stuff like that. So,
and Penta's, I assume, right? Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, Penta, I don't believe even did it. I heard that Phoenix did it. Like I didn't watch the show, but it's all speculation, but I'm grateful nonetheless. But anyways, you have my blessing for the next 11 and a half months.
Yay!
Do the Canadian Destroyer. Yep. So
well, wait a second. Wait,
reconvene next September.
Petey.
What's up, Dennis?
I think she should be able to use it now forever. Once you get the blessing, forever. She doesn't get...
but do I have to touch the Bible and put my hand over my heart, and do I have to say something to make that?
No, I just think in any interview you do when the Canadian Destroyer move comes up, you gotta just say, you know what, Petey Williams gave me the blessing.
I love it. I love that. Okay.
I just want a little bit of recognition. I don't expect royalties or anything like that. Just like, hey, Petey Williams gave me the blessing. And then that way people know, like, hey, Petey Williams and Chelsea Green are okay to do the Canadian Destroyer. Next year it'll be one more, whoever, and we'll get a little like a big group going on,
like the Hall of Fame.
I love this, and it's wild to me because that move is something that, like, especially all of us wrestlers know. We know that that you are the man behind the move. But when I did that at All In, I can't even tell you the amount of tweets I got that was like, "What was that?"
Yeah, and it's so crazy. I'm like, how is it? I'm like, that move was established in actually 2003 is the first time I did it, and it was on TV by 2004 and early 2004. And I'm like, people are like, oh, I've never seen that before. Like just recently, somebody said, "Oh, that was off the top rope. I'm 32 years old. I've never seen that before." I'm like, yeah, I did that to the same guy off the top rope like 15 years ago. But whatever. So it's just amazing to me that there's still people that haven't seen this move. And I'm like, how did you not see this move with all this social media and all this stuff that's happening today?
I know. I thought that's exactly what I thought too. And there was a couple times that I told them it was your move, and then I'm like, oh my God, this is just like beating a dead horse with these people. How do they not know?
Hey, you have to remember, Chelsea, like in 2003 when this move came about, that was 15 years ago, some of these kids weren't even born yet, right?
Oh, that's so true. That is so true. And like social media really has been like at the forefront maybe for the last, I don't know, 9 years, 8 years?
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, we're still getting new at this. So it's all good, though. But anyways, Dennis, do you have any more questions before we promote Chelsea and wrap this up?
No, all I'm going to say now is, Petey, you have to make it public. As soon as we're done with this interview, you need to go on Twitter and say, Chelsea is the only approved.
I'm already going to do that. My Twitter.
Chelsea Green is the one and only move. Because a lot of people say, hey, Petey Williams and Teddy Hart should be the only people that do this move. No, Teddy Hart should not be able to do the move. I'm like, no, he's doing that move out of spite. So which we won't get into. Maybe we'll talk about this later on, Dennis. But
you just sounded so Canadian. That whole sentence sounded so Canadian.
And you know what, Chelsea? You don't even sound that Canadian. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I'm like 3 Labatt's Blues like deep right now. So
the Canadians coming out.
yeah, the Canadians coming out. But you know, you're Canadian. You know how it is with the accent and all that kind of stuff. You do not sound Canadian. You must live in America right now, obviously. But anyways, Chelsea, please tell us all the listeners and stuff like that. Where can people find you? Where they follow you? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram, Chelsea A. Green, and on Twitter at I'm Chelsea Green. That's the first time I've ever got that right on a podcast. Nailed it.
All right. So, Chelsea, you know, thank you very much, everybody. The very beautiful, talented Chelsea Green, formerly Laura Van Ness on Impact Wrestling. Please follow her. And thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me, and thank you for the blessing. I can't wait to tweet it out.